And welcome to the Confronting Fear podcast. So welcome to episode 1. So this podcast series is designed to move past the fear of confronting difficult issues and move through the surface issues to take a deep dive into the underlying problems that create meaningful change. So in this episode, I'm going to sit down with two guests who run two very different programs for at-risk boys. So firstly, we're going to have Rick Pedley-Smith, who runs PF Welfare and Engagement for boys who are struggling to transition from young boys into healthy young men, and assists through a rites of passage program and ongoing mentoring. And then we have DeMamiel, who conducts short duration bush camps and mentoring for at-risk boys who are coming from really traumatic experiences and neglect and trying to make a positive impact on the life of these boys. So this episode is brought to you by the Fearless Seminar. The number one obstacle that stands between us and our success is our fear and our inability to face these fears and overcome adversity to live our life to its fullest on our terms. This 12-week seminar covers cognitive aspects such as how we filter information, how we process that information, the rational and irrational influence, how bias influences the process, responsive reactions, rational decision-making, anxiety and regulation, emotional construct, behaviour change and habit formation, and a number of tactics and strategies to optimise our daily interactions, response, and increase our resilience, mental and physical well-being, and live a life with maximised fulfilment. If you want to check out the seminar, click on the link in the show notes or head to www.fearlessseminar.com. Okay, and as a special offer for this episode, we'll donate 30% of the course price evenly between both of these organisations. So just sign up with the code BOYS30, all lowercase, at checkout. Not only do you get a transformational 12-week course that will truly change your life, but you get to positively impact the life of a young man who you'll hear today is in desperate need of changing their direction. So this conversation gets really deep into the challenges and the real trauma that some of these kids face, and some of the stories will be confronting and difficult to hear. Discretion is advised, as some people might find these facts disturbing, but this is the life these kids are trying to deal with. This is their perspective of the world, and it will definitely make you challenge just what are the real problems that you face. For me, this definitely gave me more context to the brutality that some people are trying to overcome and reshape within their lives through their understanding of the world. Okay, having made the choice to be exposed to hardship for most of my life, this was still eye-opening and made me extremely grateful for the chances that I've had in life. Okay, we need to hear these stories so we can understand just how lucky most of us are, and understand that raising not only boys but all children into healthy adults really does take a village. We're all responsible for how these kids develop their understanding of the world, their place in it, the value of their existence. And if we can move past the behaviours that we see and look at how they are formed as a result of the survival that they face within these environments, and see these kids as those who are in most need of our help and offer a place for them to belong, show them the world does care and that they can feel safe, we can positively impact their trajectory and build a better environment for future generations to prosper and avoid the current mistakes that we're making. So without further ado, let's get on with the podcast. You're going to say, Adam, about the Boys of the Bush program?
Yeah, so look, I guess I'll give you a brief background, and apologies, Rick, you've heard much of this, but my background's in teaching and special needs. I taught at a high school for just on 15 years, and majority of that time in a behaviour setting and working predominantly with boys. And we started boys education programs for probably close to a decade, and they ranged in what we did. Yeah, I was running some programs at school with some pretty good results around our, behaviour and attendance. And we decided that we needed to have a crack and sort of do a bit more of it. We really enjoyed it. It was having great results. So we decided to set up a bit of a business. Absolutely had no idea where it would go, and it was only ever going to be doing it in our spare time on some weekends and some school holidays. And it's kind of evolved now. 3.5 years later, I've left teaching about 18 months ago. There's another full-time staff member. We're weeks away from having a few more full-time staff members and probably about 15 casuals. It started initially just with camps for any kids, and still do camps for any kids. But what we found, we were getting kids, and still do get kids, from highly traumatic backgrounds, very limited family or social networks, kids that predominantly are in out-of-home care or have been homeless or are homeless. And the majority of kids, quite a few. When I say the majority, a vast number of these kids have quite challenging behaviours. We started just with camps. They were going really well. I'm trying to give you a really brief rundown on it all.
Yep.
Camps, kids super engaged, kids that want to come back that traditionally aren't invited back to many things. And now it's kind of evolved to, we do mentoring. So we're trying to stay in touch with these kids a lot more and trying to achieve a bit more with them rather than just giving them a great experience on these camp and, some memories. We're really trying to work with the kid one-on-one and pair them up with a decent person and work more of a holistic approach. So particularly with the older boys, it's assisting them to get into the workforce, or it's assisting them to connect with culture for a lot of the Indigenous boys. And what we probably do, connecting them with the communities. So that's kind of where we're at right now. And we've got a model that we know works. And we're looking at rolling that out into a number of regional communities initially and just kind of seeing where it takes us. We're not trying to get big for the sake of it. We're just going where the need is and I guess trying to have as big an influence on as many kids as we can.
Yeah, and Rick, you do something it's sort of a little bit similar, but has a little bit of difference to it as well, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So I'm basing it out of school itself. Sorry, within schools.
Yep.
We started it the same thing, is that I was working before my current school. I was working for a behavioural disorder unit, saw a lot of trauma in kids there, and then coming back here to Sydney, found myself really lucky to be in an amazing school, but still found that there was a lot of trauma the boys were facing. They didn't know how to deal with it. They couldn't even communicate it. So we created a program here just to try and help them talk about what's going on, find their feet, find a way to deal with the different issues, and then to step forward there. And basically, long story short, to turn it into a kind of a rite of passage for the boys. So we found there's no delineation between child to man anymore. 200 years ago, they guys were hunting lions, jumping off towers with vines, going to war, all those things. And these days, it looks like they've got to drink more, have as many different sexual partners as they can, drive fast. And as a teacher, we saw these guys coming unstuck time and time again. And yeah, my partner in the program, Wade Fairclough, and I tried to, turn this around.
After you do the rite of passage and that sort of thing, the transition for the boys there, how do they going back and changing what was their life to try and evolve what they want their new life to look like? Or what are the challenges they face? And I guess this is pertinent for both, is that, like I look at things from a behaviour perspective. I know behaviour change is built on the back of beliefs and the way you see the world. And if you're the only one changing, it'd be difficult. So, like, how challenging is that for the boys to go and then sort of try and change their world? Obviously, it's not going to happen large scale, but, sort of small increments.
We struggled a lot. And we took the boys all the way through. We've been going now for 3 or 4 years, 4 years now. And we took all the boys through. We did the rite of passage and we came back, and it kind of fell down on them because they felt they'd changed, but nobody around them had seen a change in them or, actually accepted that change. So now the program itself is evolving. So when the boys come back, we actually do stuff with the parents. We try to get the dads in, or the mums, whoever looks after them at home, talk to them about it and say, look, there is a change. He's, gone away a boy, he's coming back more of a man, but manhood is a lifetime journey.
Yep.
And you have to look at him differently now. And we do that with the school staff as well. So that is still very much a work in process because, yes, we're experiencing a fair bit of difficulty in doing that.
Yeah, okay. And you'd see something similar, I'm assuming, Adam, with obviously you're dealing with sort of a slightly different group that have less support networks once they leave. But how important is that mentoring piece that you spoke about once they leave?
Yeah, look, the mentoring is kind of what's taking over for us. That's the thing that's making a real difference for these kids. Again, it's something that is evolving. I guess one of the main challenges we have is the supports the kids have around them when they're not with us. We're one of our core values is community, so we're very, very keen on putting it back on the community. So if these communities these kids are coming from need to take ownership of these kids that, you know, have it tough. So it's by using them and I guess linking the kids up with their community and the services within the community to help support them. Because without us, without our mentors, a lot of these kids don't have their eyes opened up to what supports are actually around. And it's really hard for them to get out of the cycle that they've been born into without someone different coming in that they know, that they trust. And that's where we fit in. We're that person that they know once they've got our start, like they've got us for life. We're not someone that's going to come in and when the funding dries up, or not that we have funding, but we're not a group that's going to come in and 12 months later there's going to be a new and UBUT program to come in and try and help them. Like, we want the kids to know when we set up in their community, we're there for the long haul. So, you know, we've got a 21-year-old young fella that we've been working with that was, you know, in all sorts of bother a while back, and he's now a real success story in that we're looking to employ him, and we'll totally change the way his sort of future looks. And that's all because of the people we put in front of them. We pride ourselves on the types of people we have working with the kids. They're not academics. There's no set mould. They're just good people. And I think the more these kids are exposed to good people, the more chance they are of, I guess, reflecting those traits and what we're trying to teach them, show them, not teach them.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff I've seen has sort of shown that, like, even from a young age, kids learn from watching how people respond. Mm. And that's how they learn what their model to response is to certain things. So, like, one of the things that I've always sort of found intriguing, or, you know, potentially might be leading to some of these issues, is that we put sort of success measures around people and then sort of put sports stars in front of kids, and we put people that have been, you know, financially successful, these sort of things. But, you know, the question is, are they the right models for these kids to grow up on? Like, we don't really bring in sort of, you know, like an average sort of, well, average is probably the wrong word, but bring in someone who's sort of in a position where they feel they have enough in life and they're just about good, strong values and these sort of things. I don't think we put enough of those people in front of, this is what, you know, a good character looks like, not someone who's striving for success.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we're working towards. Sorry, Rick, that's what we're working towards, is finding people that are already embedded in a community, that have links in that community, you know, are willing to use their links in the community to assist these kids. It's doing the role of what a lot of parents should do. So I don't know about you guys, but, you know, most people I know, most of my mates, they got their first part-time job or job through a mate of dad's or mum's boss gave us a part-time job. You know, there's those links, but these kids, a lot of the kids we deal with don't have those links. So, yeah, we're very much about surrounding with positive people that don't have to teach them, they just show them, and the kids learn by just seeing and being, you know, that behaviour is, they're exposed to that behaviour regularly to show them what a different kind of normal could look like.
Yeah, we're I'd have to agree with what you said there. We're trying to do a similar thing. We worked out that with these guys, without a sense of purpose, they're lost. So we've teamed up now with the New South Wales Commando Association.
Yep.
And we've got quite a few of those guys who are acting as mentors to the boys. So they're going to come in, and any activity that we do outside of school, even some in school, they'll be coming in and participating in. And just so they know that there's another person out there and there's somebody else they can look up to. So I think, Daniel, we spoke about this briefly the other night.
Yep.
Mark Donaldson came in, like, very kindly and worked with our boys for a while. And, you know, you're talking about footy players as role models and things like that. And, you know, I'm not bagging those guys, but, you know, the highlight that we made was, if you look at Instagram, not taking away from Mark, he's got like 20,000 followers, and there's a footy player who's famous for whizzing in his own mouth, and he's got 70,000.
Yeah.
So, like, what are these guys learning?
Yeah, how do you compete with that?
Yeah, like, and they're meant to be famous and all this and all that, and, you know, he's a guy that's turned his life around and is a success in any possible way that you look at him with Mark. You know, and he's just a great guy. and people are going, oh yeah, that's awesome, but look what this guy's done. How great, how hilarious is that? So yeah, it's like you said, Adam, we're trying to take the community value and use positive members within the community themselves to be more positive male role models, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess the other part of it is showing them, and I think we've touched on it, showing them what success can look like. So for me, success for some of the boys I work with, a success story is them, I guess, getting through school, or it could be them just getting a job. They might be brickies labourer the rest of their life, and that's just that for some of those kids would be the best thing ever. Like for me to go and just go, wow, like that is such a success. So what we try and do is, let's introduce to some brickies labourers. It's a real job, or that type of thing. It might be a shearer, and on the flip side, introduce them to some teachers or some police, or just real people doing real things. And that's what life is. It's not, not everyone can have a distinguished career in different things and be their name up in lights. But to have a successful or a meaningful life, you've just got to be contributing and have that purpose. For a lot of the kids we deal with, they don't have a connection to anything. They've been shipped around quite often. But for once now, Boys to the Bush is kind of their connection. It's their team they belong to. So, we're really lucky. Once you get that connection, you can do anything with these kids. Once you gain their trust and they realise, here's someone that actually gives a shit about me, we can push them in the right direction and lead them to the different things. There's loads of programs in schools that are fantastic programs, but a lot of kids don't give them the chance because it's not sold to them by anyone. So, yeah, they don't have a connection with a teacher or a family member that can say, look, you really need to get involved in this program. They're leaning on us, and I know not all of them, but the majority of the kids we work with, if their mentor or one of our staff say, mate, this would be really valuable for you, they know we're not going to bullshit them, because we'll tell them if it's a shithouse program too, don't worry. But if it is a good program, then we'll be telling them. And I think that's part of why we gain their trust, and that's so much, because they know we'll tell them if we think it's a bad idea or whatever. But again, it's up to them to make the decisions.
Yeah, but like you said, mate, without trust, there's no buy-in with the kids. You seem to be just another person, saying all the right words and mouthing off to them, and then you just disappear like everybody else has. So that trust is very hard earned, but once you've got it with these kids, they'll do anything for you. Yeah,
the tougher the kid, the more loyal they are, I always say. And I've got so many examples of that with some of the kids on our camp that, dead set, I didn't think I'd ever see them again, and kind of part of wouldn't. They cause all sorts of grief, and then, 2 years later, they're some of the most loyal kids, still facing all sorts of battles in their life, but they bloody run through a brick wall for us, and then to think 2 years ago where they were at with us and the amount of grief they cause us and our staff, and do we give them another go? That's a real success for those kids. They've learned a lot, and those are really hard things for us to measure.
Yeah, just with some of that, because I look at a lot of early stuff, and with kids, it seems really important that when they're really young and they're trying to work out who they are, the people around them, or their parents mostly, like the level of attention and love they give them seems to be integral to whether they feel that they're important in life or whether their life has any value to it. So, like if there's no parent there, or they're abandoned by a parent, or their parents are busy trying to succeed or obtain things, and they're sort of not really paying enough attention to their children, like that's probably going to develop this need to belong, or this sort of a lack of that sort of love or attention that they're desiring. And then when they get older, do you think that their behavior reflects the fact that it's easier to misbehave and confirm that they're not lovable than risk making that connection and having someone abandon them again? Do you sort of think there's a lot of boys that are suffering from that sort of thing?
100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's one of the absolute key factors, is that if you're talking about behavior from, my perspective is, don't, look at the boy, don't look at the behavior. There's something that has caused that behavior. Okay, the behavior is just their only way of expressing how they feel, and whether it's a lack of attention, a lack of love, or whatever it is, then that's how it comes out. But yeah, 100%. I think when we talk to the boys and we really break it down, it's like what's your key problem? And they're like, they're scared. What of? No one loves me.
Yeah, it's massive. Because I sort of look at it, for them growing up, they understand what day-to-day survival looks like in an environment where they're on their own. And it's sort of easier to go back to that rather than face the fear of someone else abandoning them, or sort of, you know, making themselves vulnerable and then getting let down again, sort of thing. So, you know, it's just interesting to get your side or what you see from it.
I think the other part too is, you know, for some of them, any attention's good attention. So if you're marking up at school and you've got teachers chasing you, well, there's people that are showing you some attention. Often, you know, those particularly kids that are neglected and don't receive any form of attention, they're just seeking someone's attention, someone to pay, you know, spend some time with them, even though it's not productive or may not be too enjoyable for them. But I think that's another reason for some of the lads as well. It's just they mark up at school, and, you know, one, it's funny for a lot of the kids, and that they're going to have someone come and pay them some attention.
Yeah, I did see a theory that looked at that, which sort of, when they do feel that no one really cares for their existence, is that when they muck up and someone comes to actually look after them, it almost confirms that, yes, someone does actually care if they're going down the wrong path.
Exactly, yeah.
But, you know, that needs to be reinforced consistently, not just through sort of negative behaviour, to work against that initial fear.
And I guess it's reinforced, Rick. I probably told you the story of the young fella that kind of changed it for me. And I guess it adds to what we're talking about. But Daniel, to inform you, so on our second camp, we had a young fella on, and he was an absolute nightmare. Just did everything possible he could, it seemed, to annoy the hell out of us. He did a real good job of that. And we spent the whole week at the camp just rousing on this kid and chasing him around and whatever else. And, you know, we thought, oh, this kid, you know, we never want him back, and he'll probably never want to come back because he's had a pretty ordinary time. Anytime we were talking to him, it was negative because he'd been playing up, and we're saying, sit down over there. And so anyway, he said, see to him, and he sure enough, he turns up he books in for the next camp, and we're like, oh, I'll give him a crack. We'll give him another chance. And he was a little bit better, but only just. And then he same sort of thing on the camp, marked up a fair bit, and we're like, oh, Jesus, you know, what are we doing on these camps, putting up with kids like this? And then got the phone call a month or so later, and his caseworker said he had cancer, and, you know, obviously pretty ordinary sort of thing to hear, and just sort of said, whatever we can do, yell out, we'd love to help, the little rat bag. And she said, the reason I'm ringing you is because we asked him right down, like he was real crook, like, you know, he's going all right now, but he was real crook then. And she said, the reason I'm calling is because we asked him to write down the two most important people in his lives. He wrote down his auntie and he wrote down you. And for me, that was the moment that sort of something ticked in me. I was like, holy shit, you know, like this kid should hate me. And he's writing me down as one of the two most important people in his whole life. And I've spent 8 days of his life, of his life with me. And the whole, probably 99% of that, we were yelling at him and telling him, get here and get out of there and whatever else. But I guess it reinforces what we're talking about. You know, we gave him some attention, but he could actually see we were rousing on him because he was doing the wrong thing, but we're doing it because we gave a shit about him. So we've been lucky enough to help the kid since. When he became homeless, he come and live with us, and he's through that. We, you know, visited him when he had his long stay in hospital in Sydney a couple of times, and we've got him into boarding school when he started kicking around with the wrong crew. And I just got a text from him now. He's out doing some driving lessons with my brother. So, you know, I tell that story all the time, but the reason I bring it up here is because it's that very thing. These kids want someone that gives a shit about them. And how they show that, and how he wouldn't have known any other way to get our attention. That's just what he was used to. He certainly got our attention. He was such a pain in the ass. And I tell him that all the time. And, you know, he wants to finish school and come and work for us. Well, you know, at least you know where those kids are coming from. And, you know, we gave you a crack, so you could do the same.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, kind of, to me, that raises the question of how many of these boys that are in trouble really want to get out of trouble, like really don't want to be stuck in that trouble, but they just know no other way out of it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Yeah. It's, you know, we're products of our environment, aren't we? You know, if that's what happens at home, then that's what you're used to, then that's what happens. So again, by surrounding them with decent people regularly, they might start to learn that there is another way. I was in Burke recently for a camp, and we were looking after kids there, and we were dropping a young bloke home one night and couldn't find anyone at home and didn't want to leave him there on his own, and drove around to the uncle's place and no one home there. So we go to the pop's place. No, he didn't want him to stay there. And the kid was starting to get pretty upset. He was only about 10 or 11, and, you know, he's going to all those rallies and they're like, no, you're not staying with me tonight. You're not staying with me. And I'm like, well, where's your sister, mate? Like, where is she? And he's like, I don't know where she'd be. I said, well, you know, where am I going to take you? You can't stay. You know, we weren't allowed to have them overnight. And he said, oh, what night is it? And I said, oh, it's Tuesday. He goes, oh, well, she'd be out drinking then if it's Tuesday. And it was just said in such a normal way, because that's what normal is. Tuesdays, his sister who looks after him is on the drink. And, yeah, the kids in those communities, regional communities, I think it's even harder to get away from that. And I don't have the answers for it, but yeah, I just think their environment they live in is the one thing that, if we can't change the home environment, we can at least show them a different one in some way.
Yeah, show them there's something else out there that is a different version of normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You know, for me, I've never really been exposed too much to the sort of that level of sort of abandonment, I suppose you'd call it, sort of thing. But I suppose, like, for the most people that aren't really dealing with that, I suppose probably some of the stuff that you work with, Rick's, probably more pertinent to most parents around sort of, you know, there's a lot of, or from what I perceive, there's a lot of expectation on kids now to do really well academically, to sort of follow certain paths. And I sort of do a little bit of work in junior rugby, and I know definitely there, like, a lot of parents think that their kids' performance now is going to be reflected in their chances of getting into rugby academies and this sort of thing. I'm like, you know, they're 7 years old. Like, there's a long way.
Get a grip.
But your expectation is having an impact on these kids, and I guess you probably see a lot more of that in the stuff that you're looking at.
Yeah, it's funny you said that. Like, the way we look at it is, it's kind of like that age-old thing. You know, you get that sporting mum or dad that's always pushing their kid. They're kind of living through their kid. You know, like they didn't make it at footy, so they're going to make sure that their son does. So that way they kind of make it, if that makes sense. The expectations differ, I think, greatly. And unfortunately, some of them, like, the expectation is, yeah, you'll never be anything.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So, and that's what the kids are up to. So, you know, the school I'm at now is very high performing. And I don't see much with the kids in my program, but with other people, there is that expectation there of, you know, doctor, lawyer, engineer kind of thing. They're your three career choices. Pick which one you like, you know, as long as one of those three. The boys within the program itself is sometimes there is no expectation other than that. No, it doesn't matter what you do, you're going to fail anyway, kind of thing. And so, yeah, it is a hard one. I mean, the biggest thing that we deal with through expectation is one, and it came from one of the boys. We said, like, what are you most scared of? He goes, what's if this is it? So he was in year 10, but he had the reading age of a 6-year-old kid and comprehension. He goes, what if this is as good as I get? Like, I don't get any better. He goes, I can't read the newspaper. He goes, I can't read a job sheet. He goes, I can't write an order list, because he got some afternoon work with doing labouring for a carpenter, and he couldn't even read the order list there. Yeah, so, you know, the self-expectation, I think, is more detrimental even.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense, because I sort of, and this is probably a little bit more theoretical on my behalf, is, like, I think one of the most dangerous things we can do to children is put them into a victimization, or give them this self-limiting victimizationhood. Because I think if we're in a position where we're a parent, or we're a coach, or we're supervising children, and we say, you know, you're a victim to this, whether it's genetics or whether it's, you know, a demographical thing or something like that, like, we're almost oppressing those kids to a life where they feel they're stuck in it, they can't get out of it. Like, I suppose this is probably relevant to both groups, like you'd see a lot of kids that have been conditioned to believe that there's no hope for them regardless. So what's the point of trying? Like, and that kind of goes to that fear you're talking about. It's almost a conditioned oppression that they've been given.
Yeah, that's a much more eloquent way than I tried to just say it. But yeah, you're 100% correct in the fact that you look at kids and you say, this ethnicity or this demographic's going to have trouble because of X, Y, and Z. And all of a sudden the kid goes, oh, I won't be able to do that because of, I am X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Instead of looking at going, like the way we're trying to teach it is, you're not a victim of your circumstance. You're a victim of your choices.
Yeah.
And, we've got kids that have come from, pretty horrendous things, like the same as Adam. And one of our boys, he lost his dad. He took his own life at 7. And unfortunately, this kid walked in and saw it. Then he lost his mum at 11 and she passed away in his arms. And in year 11, he turns around and fun enough, after a conversation with Mark Donaldson, and he said, I'm not a victim. He goes, I'm not a victim of my circumstances because there's other kids in the room that are way worse than me, have it way worse than me. He goes, I'm a victim of the choices I've made and the beliefs that I've held. So by changing your viewpoint or trying to get these kids to see a new normal, or that they are worthwhile, or that they actually have any kind of value at all, I think kind of counteracts that victim mentality.
Yeah, well, I guess they need someone to sort of guide them as well. And because I look at a lot of science stuff, and there's some research around sort of what they call the Rosenthal or Pygmalion effect, which is where you've probably come across it. Original research was in teaching, and it looked at the teacher's expectation on children. So, unless we have an expectation that they are limitless almost in what they can do, like we're almost limiting them. So, for them to believe, somebody else has to believe as well. So that's why I sort of look at it.
Yeah. So if you're a teacher and you look at your class and you've got 8 blue or something, and you just go, oh god, that's the behavior class. And instantly, just through your own conditioning, you think, all right, I better dumb down the work as much as I can. I'm in for a fight. You walk in with an aggressive attitude, you give them menial work, and you've just shot yourself in the foot. I think that if you walk in, you go, all right, I've got 8 blue. I've heard a few stories. Let's see what you guys are capable of. And, I was person A, and I try these days to be person B. And I'll go and say, all right, look, everybody's got a reputation. That reputation stays at the door. Show me what you've got. Bring me your best. Let's see. I always say, I'm going to push you harder than anybody's ever pushed you before, because I want to see what you're actually capable of. And I reckon 9 times out of 10, you get some amazing work out of them, because all of a sudden they've been given permission to be better than who they think they are, or who they've been trained to think they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
Yeah, I guess you probably get a lot more respect as well for the fact that you challenged them and showed that you actually cared about their outcomes, rather than coming in, because people, they look at you straight away and they identify whether you offer them something or whether you're a threat to them. So if you walked into that classroom and just your non-verbal communication said that you thought they were a problem, they'll pick up on that, and then they're responsive to it. So and I'm not going to put down teaching or anything like that. I think it's a fairly tough profession, but from what I've seen, once these kids disengage in those classrooms, it's really hard to get them back.
Yeah, so there's a guy called Dr. Ian Lillico. He operates out of Perth at I think it's Edith Cowan University, and he's just spent a lot of years researching it. And his big thing is boys follow teachers, they don't follow subjects.
Yeah.
So my wife teaches TAS, so my wife teaches welding, woodwork, metalwork, all of that kind of stuff. And they follow her because she is so good with them. And if they get a bad woodwork teacher, then they'll drop the subject. So I know it keeps boiling down to that principle. If you treat someone with respect and an open mind, guess what? They're probably going to do the same thing for you. And I think, Adam, you could fill in a lot more on this, in that the boys you're getting there, you're there, and fresh start. This is me, you're you. Let's see where it takes us.
Yeah, and that's pretty much the philosophy we take to each of them. Yeah, and we're going to get let down, and this is something we let the staff know is, you're going to get let down by these kids, but, if you have a rough day and they abuse you one day, then you've got to turn up the next day and go again, because it's not personal with a lot of those kids, with all the kids. It's not personal unless we've done something to upset them. Then it's not personal. It's just you're the closest person to them. It's often easy to take it out on the people closest to you. So if they are taking it out on us, I guess you can take it as a pat on the back occasionally.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. You're that safe person. So they know they can come to you, Adam. They can absolutely explode, lose their mind, go full tilt. And it's not going to change your relationship with them. So you are the safe person to explode in front of.
Yeah.
Where if they did that out in the street or at a school, then, they're going to be sanctioned for that behavior.
Yeah.
When that's the only method of expression that there's something wrong that they have.
Yeah. And we're trying to, I guess, change the norm around the guys and the whole masculinity thing. And, have a yarn to us, if you need to bloody have a cry or whatever, good. Like, if you can do that with us, that's great. If you want to talk, you don't have to. Like, we're not pushing anything. We're not pushing any hidden messages. It's just letting them be comfortable. And, I don't know if I told you the yarn about the camp I was on that footy ground, and we had a bit of a chat around the fire. This was winter last year, and we're on an old footy ground out the road, about 50 k's out the road, and it's not used anymore, this footy ground, but we were camped there middle of winter, and we were sitting around the fire on the last night of the camp, and we get chatting, and we normally, they ask a question and we go around the circle type thing, and everyone gives an answer, and I always answer first just to get the ball rolling, and I'm as honest as I possibly can be with them. And we always get the same old questions at the start. They bring up something stupid and ask something about sex, and you sort of try and dodge that one pretty quickly. And then anyway, we got to this question, and one of the kids said, "Oh, what's the toughest thing you've been through, Adam?" And I said, "Oh, when I grew up, my sister passed away. She was only 7, and that was pretty tough, dealing with that as a kid." And went on a bit. Anyway, these tough kids, they put the arm around me, and if ever you want to talk, this is them saying to me. And I was like, "Oh, thanks, boys," and anyway, we move on to the next kid. And so we had a dozen kids, and these are just random kids that were sent to us, and we start getting, first story was, it's been pretty tough growing up with dad in jail and mum being dead, and we'd have a bit of a chat about it and move on to the next one, and the next one would be something similar. It's been tough. I've never met my dad, and my mum's a drug addict. So then we move on to the next one, and we'd have a chat about it, obviously, and if they wanted to chat about it, we'd chat about it. And then got to the next kid, and we'd had him for a couple of years on camps, and he said, 3 years ago, I walked into the bathroom and found my mum drowning my baby sister. And I was just sort of gobsmacked a bit, because I've had a bit to do with this kid, and he's an absolute legend. And so we had a bit of a chat, and he got a bit emotional about it. And we sort of moved on and went to the next kid, and he's like, "Oh, my dad hung my brother, and I found him." And I was just like, "Oh, shit," and have a bit more of a chat. And they were just horrific stories, and they just said it so nonchalant, like it was just so normal. And, there was kids there, 11, that, their best friend had committed suicide, and just it got to the point where I was just like, boys, this isn't a bloody competition, like don't try and outdo each other. But they were 100% genuine, and it kept going around with just horrific stories. And, we're talking about kids that knew their sisters were used as like prostitutes for dad's mates who were, bikies and all this sort of business. And then it got to the last kid, and it's kind of funny now, but he said, "I'm lucky. I've had nothing tough in my life." And I said, "Oh, well, you must have had something. Share something. What's been tough? Is school tough?" He's like, No, I play up. It's easy. No dramas." And I'm like, "All right, well, have you had a pet dog die?" He's like, No, I've had nothing tough." And we're like, "Well, come on, mate. You got to give us something. It doesn't have to match any of these guys, but tell us something that you felt it's been pretty tough." And he said, "Oh, fine. Oh, I'm bloody lucky, compared to these boys. But I suppose probably dad being in jail and mum being a prostitute, but, you know, I'm lucky. And this is these kids it's just normal, you know. I guess a positive to come out of it, you know, I lied in my swag that night and I was documenting all this stuff in my phone. I was just lying there wide awake like, holy shit, what are we doing? Like, what is happening with these kids? They weren't targeted. They're just random kids that are coming to us. And so the next day I called some caseworkers and parents and stuff just to notify them and, you know, let them know what's going on and what was shared. And, you know, some of them had said, you know, he's never ever spoken about that. And we're like, well, yeah, he did last night. And, you know, he had a cry and I had a cry and we had a bit of a yarn after it. And they're like, he's been, you know, speaking to a psychologist for 2 years and he's never mentioned his friend committing suicide dying by suicide. He's never even mentioned it to he won't talk, won't open his mouth, has never cried about it. And I said, well, he did last night. Like, he was sitting there with me and I was in tears too. So, you know, and these are kids we've spent bugger all time with, but the reason I tell it is it's that connection. And when you've got that connection, you can open up and be the real you. And I don't know, I just think we're overcomplicating far too many things. And in what we do, it's all about getting back to basics, doing the simple things and being real with them. And I think that's why we're getting some good results with kids. We're not changing all of them and we'll never expect to, but I think the genuineness with our staff and what we do comes through to the kids. And that's why we're making a bit of a connection with them, making a bit of a difference. The simple things, eh?
Yeah. So that's tough to follow.
It is, mate. And you'd reckon I was making it up. Like, 8 of the 12 stories that night were just harrowing, you know, like, and there was a young fella working with me on the camp. It was his first camp. He's an auto electrician. So he's got no background in working with youth. He's just a good guy, you know, and was willing to give up a bit of time to come and help us out and teach the kids some stuff. And he was sitting there, this young fella, and like, mate, he was gobsmacked. And after he's like, if I whinge about something this week, just slap you across the face, mate. Like, holy shit, is this real? Like, yeah, talk about a bit of a reality check. We're all whinging about our bloody internet being slow and, you know, hurry up for the next Netflix series to come on.
Yeah, but think about it, and like, the way we talk about it is like, these are the guys that, like, the guys we deal with are the ones that have, you know, shown up. There's been a red flag somewhere.
Yep.
Because they can't articulate well enough to hide it. So imagine all the blokes that are out there, all the teenage guys are out there who just have a better mechanism to hide what's going on.
Oh, absolutely.
And because we spoke about this the other night, mate, is like we're scratching the very tip of the iceberg, because, you know, these are just the kids that are popping up, like you said, randomly or couldn't cover their tracks.
Yep.
So
that's right.
That's the thing that bothers us, is what else is out there. And where did it go so wrong?
We're all surprised about, you know, the youth suicide rates in young males, and, you know, there's no coincidence. They don't have a connection. They don't have anyone to open up to.
Yeah, it's like there was a neuroscientist who looked at emotion sort of thing, and he said that most psychological depression or negative emotion sort of thing comes from pain, and that's pain from not having interpersonal relationships sort of thing. So, you know, I kind of look at it as that 1,000 years ago or hundreds of years ago, we grew up in villages, and the whole village raised boys and raised girls sort of thing. You know, like, they had their traditional role sort of thing, but getting away from that, where now it's sort of, you know, everyone's so isolated. So, you know, if you're growing up, and this is back to sort of, I'll reference a, you know, nuclear family type thing or a normal family, you know, and I got caught into this trap myself, both in the military, when I had young kids, which is why I left, and then when I went into sport. It's easy to get caught up into an environment where you're trying to prove yourself within that environment. Because I think a lot of people are caught up trying to prove their own value, like in their own identity sort of thing. So it's easy to do these 10-hour, 11-hour days. But the problem is that I leave work before my kids get out of bed, and I get home just as they're going to bed. So, like, there's no village for them at home. There's just mum, and that's it. Then there's school sort of thing. So, you know, you're obviously looking at a much larger context of this, where there's completely nothing.
Yep.
But, you know, for them to get belonging, and this is where I see kids going into gangs and being, sort of recruited off the internet is because someone just wants to listen to them, or they have shared values with someone because they've been left alone for so long or isolated. And our communities are becoming more and more isolated as kids are on their phones, kids taking their phones to bed. People are living further and further away from their families, their parents and their grandparents and that sort of thing. So when you're looking at our personal relationships, like, it's getting worse and worse. So I completely agree that the depression and suicide, it's not a coincidence. It's more of the fact that we're just no longer, and we're a social being, and we've just deprived ourselves of that need for sort of social interactions.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, there's an awesome book by a guy called Sebastian Junger, called Tribe, and that's exactly what he talks about. And as an anthropologist, he's gone through and he's looked through that those tribal communities have far less suicide, anxiety, depression. Like, it's almost non-existent within them. And even looking at kids now, that like you were saying, dad's at work, mum's at work, they're the key latch kids, their world is their phone. Like, it's a cyber thing. And we even talk about, when we're teaching the teachers, the lost art of the hero. They're losing that ability to be that physical hero in the backyard, playing with their brother or whatever it is. Because everyone's so isolated. And on a game, they respawn. Oh, I died. Cool. Yep, I respawned. Off I go.
Yeah.
There's that risk and that loss of positive risk-taking behavior and things like that. But definitely the social isolation, even though I think we know, more now about so little, because we just Google whatever we want. But at the end of the day, there's still no one there at home.
And getting back, Daniel, to your point, and we use.
Sorry, I took that way off topic.
No, all good, mate. You mentioned that line, and we use it all the time. It takes a village to raise a child. One of our core values, I said earlier, is community. And I keep saying when I do different talks and stuff, we're trying to roll this out into communities, but it only works if the community buy in. So you can be a member of your community and whinge about these kids that graffiti and break and enter and, cause grief at school. You can whinge about them, but that's not going to change anything. So work out a way you can help, and if what we're doing when setting up in a community is giving people a platform to be able to help these kids. So not everyone can donate money, not everyone can work with these kids, but people can open the doors to their shop to show a kid different trades or different jobs that are available to them. People can, cook meals for us to then go and give to these kids and show them that there's people in the community that give a shit about them. So I think most people out there want to help, and it's finding a way that they can help. So I think going forward for us, we put it back on the community. If you want to help, if you genuinely want to help the kids in the community, we're not going to change them. Like, on our own, we're going to do bugger all on our own. But when you start getting buy-in from your local Rotary clubs and men's sheds and farmers and local tradies that want to come and give a kid a crack, that's when we can make some real systemic change, I think.
Yeah.
And that links back to, Daniel, what the question you asked before about, once the rite of passage is done, then what happens? And, when those kids were falling down a bit again, is exactly what you said, Adam. If we can build that community, then they've got a place in the community. They've got a value in the community.
That's right.
And so it changes not only their opinion, but also the community's opinion of the boy or man.
Yep. And I'll probably switch tack a little bit here, but you said, stuff about around the phones and stuff a bit ago, and, the kids are relying on them, and it's easy to sit a kid in front of their iPad, and I do it myself at times too, don't worry. But, we have kids arrive on our camps, and a caseworker will get out and give us, because we try and make it a bit of a digital detox for them. But we often get the caseworker will jump out and say, look, here's his iPad. I'm like, oh, well, he won't need that. They're like, oh, yeah, he needs it to sleep. And my thing is always now, well, unless he uses it as a bloody pillow, he won't be using it, he doesn't need it to sleep. And they're like, well, you're not going to get him to sleep without it. And we're like, well, we'll see about that. And mate, we have no issues with kids sleeping on camp. Waking them up's a trick. And, our very first camp, we were trying to run this brilliant camp, and we were trying to dot the I's, cross the T's, and make sure everything was tip top, you know. And we were sitting around the fire, and we had 12 kids, and 9 of them were quite heavily medicated. Anyway, we were sitting around the fire, and the numbers were dwindling that night, and got to the point where there was myself and the other 2 co-founders sitting around the fire, and we're like, holy shit, where'd all those kids go? And sure enough, they're all in their swags, snoring and sound asleep. And I'm like, oh, how good's that? And then it dawned on me, I didn't give them their medication. They all needed melatonin. And I'm like, oh, we're going to get sued. We haven't given them their meds. So we're like, what do we do? Like, so we're sort of like, oh, we can't be getting sued after our first camp. So we've gone and kicked the swags and woke the kids up, fed them their medication to make them sleep, and told them to go back to sleep. You know, how ridiculous. But then the next morning, I rang the caseworkers and said, you know, I've got to fess up. We didn't get them. They went to sleep before we could give them the meds. And they're like, no, they can't sleep without their medication. I said, well, I'm telling you, I had to kick the crap out of this kid's swag to wake him up and to give him his medication and then tell him to bloody go to sleep. And, you know, it was... There's no coincidence why they're sleeping well, that they're fed well, they're kept busy, they know they're safe, and they don't have a phone buzzing beside them. Like, you know, how simple is that?
They're not stuck in that, you know, that high level of hypervigilance.
Yeah,
that's right.
Either they know they're safe. It's dark outside. I know it's dark outside because I'm sitting outside.
Yeah.
And a lot of these guys, their normal is to be 100% on edge because they don't know what their next threat, their next assault or whatever it might be is going to actually be coming from.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, then that hypervigilance is removed. They can actually physically relax.
Yeah. And what's nice, you know, and I don't want this conversation to be all around our camps, but I can only talk about my experience. But what's nice is you get these kids that are 15 or 14, they come on the camp and they're very tough kids, and, you know, they're almost acting like they're grown up and seen it all, and a lot of trauma, obviously. They get there and they're too cool for anything. By the end of the camp, they're running around hide and seek and, you know, chases and stuff. And you're like, how good's that? Like, there's an actual kid there that, you know, not many people would have seen. They're running around and, you know, or sitting down, patting a dog and, you know, kissing a dog on the nose and all, you know, just stuff kids should be doing, and let their guard down. Like, and a lot of them do have the weight of the world on their shoulders, but I guess we need to give them more opportunities, 1, to succeed and do something positive, but 2, just to bloody be kids.
I actually really like the idea of the camps because I think a lot of our problems actually stem from technology and the way that we conduct ourselves now with, like you're saying, kids are, like, just for any kid, not necessarily those that are hypervigilant from a traumatic environment, but even when they're online, their vigilance is up, sort of thing. So like you're saying, most kids are never off. And and the research is there, that if you take a child away from the technology and you let the natural sleep cycle get in sync with the light cycle, is that they go to sleep at night. When they wake up, they get the sun, and the sun has huge benefits, just that first light. Like, they'll go into a normal cycle pretty quickly. And then sort of your second point there is play is integral to, like, health and wellness. I think more parents should get down the park with their kids and play. Like, I'm always down the park with my kids playing, and we go camping all the time, sort of thing. So I actually really like the ideas of the camps and the fact that once they go out there and they relax, they do start playing, and, you know, there's so much growth that comes from that. So
absolutely.
And they've got scope for their imagination as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, it's not being dictated by the technology that's in front of them.
Yeah. I think an interesting one's, you know, when I was teaching, you'd often hear, like, you get an email go around the whole staff, you know, these kids are going to be away for the next 3 months. They're travelling with their family, you know, up to the Central Australia and stuff. Can you put together work packages? And I'm like, are you serious? Like, how much are they going to learn on this trip up there? And they're going to have their head down reading boring crap that I'm putting in front of them. You know, let them learn from that's real life.
Yeah.
You know, those experiences, and the parents are hell bent, they're going to fall behind. Like, they're going to learn so much from something like that. Like, don't worry about missing out on bits and pieces like that, you know.
Yeah, I think we often overemphasize academic experience for life experience. Like you're saying, you know, like, you get down into some of these areas and you sit down and have conversations with people. So the richness of some of their knowledge from experience, like, you can't get that anywhere. And the life And the value lessons you get from that, I think, outweigh, you know, missing a couple of days of school or a week of school. Like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got I got put well and truly back in my box when I was traveling through Mozambique with a mate of mine. And we're sitting there and we're talking to this old bloke, and I didn't speak Portuguese, my mate did. And he's talking. And then so the guy just turns around and answers to me in English, and then he's got his own language. So here's this old bloke that's never been to school in his life. He built his own home and the home for his family out of literally the coconut trees and everything like that. And the dude speaks 5 languages. And it's like, oh, well, I've got 2 university degrees, and, like, I'd be dead in 10 seconds out there. You know? And this guy, like, you want to talk about smart. There's a difference between educated and intelligent. And this guy could speak 5 languages, build a house, fix whatever, and literally never even seen a school. So, there's a lot to be said for life experience.
Is if you can just let us know how people get in touch with you, you know, if they want to donate or lend a hand, or, you know, they might be able to assist in some sort of way.
Yeah, I guess for us, you know, we've got a website, which is just boystothebush.org.au. And there's links on there to how to contact us. There's a tab there on how people can donate if that's something they're able to do. And obviously, shoot us an email if they want to find out anything more about us and what we do. We don't have all the answers. We're just doing what we think's right, and it's going all right for now.
Yep, and on the same, we don't have the website up yet, but the email's just pfwelfareandengagement@gmail.com.
So if you enjoyed this episode and would like to help out, you can get in touch or donate through the links in the show notes. Okay, it's not only financial assistance that helps make a difference in these organisations. There are a number of ways you can volunteer or show your support. Often just showing that there is a world out there that cares for these kids, you know, could be what makes the difference. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and please feel free to give us a rating or leave any feedback. So until next time, stay safe and spend some time helping some young kids develop strong values and belonging within their community.